Elliott Close. I'm a junior and I'm a sprinter hurdler in track and field. Well, I did track in middle school first, and when I came to high school I always thought I'd be a sprinter, but it was actually the hurdles coach who saw me playing soccer in the winter season before track, and he came up to me and he said, "Hey, do you want to consider being a hurdler?" So that's how I got my start hurdling. I'm a really competitive person for one thing, and I think track gives me an outlet for that in a way that's really fun for me still. But I think it's more than that, because when I'm running it just makes me feel really alive, I guess, in a way that few other things can. I always want to keep improving my times. I want to be competitive at state this year. Places fluctuate so much from year to year, but if I can hit certain times, that's going to mean a lot to me. And I want to move up the podium. I want to get more competitive. I want to beat these girls because I'm a competitive person. Oh boy. There's a lot of stuff that I've done in track that I'm really proud of. I remember freshman year, I was really proud to make it to the state meet, but I set my goal for sophomore year to be making it to state finals. And I was so proud when I hit that last year. And it was even more so when I managed to come in 6th at state finals, despite having a lower seed ranking. It's always rough coming into a season for the first time because some girls do more to prep going in than others, and if you're focusing on doing well at state meet or at the end of the season, you're not always going to be so competitive with the people who just came off a really strong winter season. So coming in last year, I was racing a girl who I guess would be my rival, except she's a little bit too nice for that, in an early meet. And I just really wanted to win, and I wanted to run well, I wanted to run a good time. And I managed to do none of these things. I had a terrible race that was really slow, and it wasn't just losing to somebody, but it was a fiasco. But I think it gave me a lot of motivation going into the season. I guess it's more competing with myself at this point. In a lot of races that I went through last season and I'm expecting to go into this year, there won't be a lot of girls that I'm racing against, but I always want to try to beat my own times and outdo myself, because in reality, it doesn't matter to me so much for my own sake or my own future how I stack up at these meets, but I want to do well. Yeah, for sure. So many of these experiences just serve to fuel me, and I think about this stuff, and I think it's more than just the wins, but it's the experiences I get from them. Just remembering being at these meets and the excitement and the tension in the air, and just how, I guess, relieved I feel after meets, but also how excited I feel for the next one as soon as I finish the last one.
Well, I'm the head sprint coach here. I've been coaching at Gun for the last 4 years. With Maya specifically, I've coached her for the last 3 years. She's a junior now. In general, it's probably the most ridiculous work ethic that I've ever seen when it comes to track and field. She tries to go to the maximum asked at the very least, and I usually have to step in and try and bring her back down, mostly to prevent injuries and that sort of thing. But if we're just talking about if she has a good work ethic when it comes to track, then yeah, definitely.
I think one of the hard things is showing moderation sometimes. I find it pretty easy to go into a hard day and get pretty psyched for that and pumped up for that. And easy it is, of course, relaxing or whatever, but sometimes it's hard to know when to pull back. And that's something that my coach has helped me with and my teammates have to help me with, but it's something I'm learning. Something that's a little funny about me is I'm definitely a big meet person, so sometimes I get way too nervous for little meets that don't really matter, but when I show up at these big meets, I am ready to go. Like, that is my thing. I do get pretty nervous beforehand, but I have, I guess, routines that I go through beforehand. I always warm up in a certain way. The night before, I always just put my stuff in order so I'm sure I'm ready, and I always eat the same dinner the night before meets, and I find that having these little habits or rituals helps me just calm down and relax and focus on my race. I guess the most important thing that I do is I try to visualize my race in my head before I go through it. So I'll imagine getting into the blocks, I'll imagine the gun going off, I'll imagine my start and the curve, and then as I come around and I'm thinking already about chasing down that girl and finishing first. So right before I was going into the state prelims, I was so excited, honestly, because I had the experience from last year, because it can be a bit bewildering when you first start going to the big meets, and my freshman year I had very little clue what was going on, but this year I felt like I was on top of it and I was just so focused on that race. And it was an amazing feeling, especially right at the end. And right afterwards, I was the happiest I've been, and the happiest I can remember being in a long time. That race came down to the last hurdle, and I caught a girl right over the last hurdle. I made it into finals. She didn't, and that's the way of the sport. But I was, at that moment, so relieved that I'd kicked at the end, that it was super exciting. And on the last day, it was just sort of a give it my all type of thing, because I had nothing to lose at that point. So the race ended up going really well and I was so excited